I'm going to show you how to make a tubular herringbone stitch. It was another stitch requested of me, and as I said before, instead of doing a separate channel with just basic stitches, I will show you the basic stitch and interpret it into a design so that when you finish you will know the stitch well because you've done an entire project with it, and you will have something to show for it. So this is just a tubular herringbone. I've used size 6 seed beads to help so that you can see as I'm teaching you. Also, it's easier to work with bigger beads. Now, a herringbone works very well with smaller beads because it will be a lot more flexible. And this one, you could make a bracelet out of this. Well, you could, but you'd have to make it a bangle because it doesn't bend real well. So I've made it into a necklace. However, it worked fine with these 6/0 seed beads, but like I said, when you learn the stitch, you can use smaller beads and you can interpret into several different types of weaves. You can use you can mix big beads, little beads, crystals, all kinds of stuff as you're doing your herringbone, your tubular herringbone. But today, this is how we're going to do it, just so that we can learn the stitch really well. It also turns out pretty. We've got a little embellishment in the front with crystal, and it turns out quite cute. So let's go ahead and look at what we will need to start this project. So for our beads, we're going to use 2 colors of 6/0 seed beads. These are check seed beads. I'm using a mix of white and kind of an off-white pearlized 6/0 seed bead. That's going to be my main color. And then I'm also using a violet 6/0 seed bead, also a check. I'm going to use a lavender 2x3 crystal roundel, and these are fire polish. And if you're having a hard time finding 2x3 crystals, I ended up buying a lot of fire polish 2x3 or a lot of thunder polish 2x3 crystals because they're difficult to find in Swarovski or other brands even. So you can find the 2x3 thunder polished crystals at Bead Corp. And then you'll need an 11/0 seed bead, and I am using a pearlized white check 11/0. And if you decide to use Japanese beads, keep in mind that they're bigger than check, so you may have to adjust your embellishments as far as your seed bead, your 11/0, and your necklace length may be a little bit longer, a little bit looser, things like that, simply because the beads are a little bit bigger. I would also prefer to use round and not Delica or Treasures, which are tubular. We're going to be embellishing these, so we want to be able to get between the beads pretty good. Plus, the holes are really big on those beads, and using this size of a bead to do the herringbone, first of all, is already thready, and it's already kind of loose, so we don't want to make it even more so. Then I have about 24 4mm round Swarovski clear crystals, simply because I didn't have a purple and I didn't have any other color actually. I have the clear rounds, so I'm going to use those in my center of my piece. And then you will need a clasp. I'm using a lobster-claw clasp, oversized, and you will need 2 wire guardians, and you'll need some chain. So you'll need about probably 4 to 6 inches of chain. So if you're going to put 2 or 3 on each side of your necklace. It just depends on how long you want it. And then you will need a beading needle, of course. I'm using a size 10 English beading needle, and I'm using 8-pound Fireline, and you're going to need several yards of Fireline. So thread onto your needle a comfortable length of Fireline. And we will begin by picking up 2 6/0 seed beads. We are going to do a basic ladder to do our basic tubular herringbone stitch. We'll start with a ladder. We're going to bring the 2 down, leave a very long tail, 12 to 16 inches, so that you can put your clasp on the end of your piece. So pick up 2, slide them down, leaving a long tail. Then you will go back through the first bead you added, the one closest to the tail, and pull. This will lay your beads side by side. Then we will sew back through in a circle. You're coming out of this bead here. You're going to go into the bead next to it and pull tight. Then come back through the first bead and pull tight again. Pull your tail and your working thread and get them very nice and neat and tight next to each other. Probably sew through it 2 or 3 times. And then, after you've done that, pick up another 6/0 seed bead onto your needle. You're coming out of the back side, the bottom here of the second seed bead. You're going to go into the opposite side where the thread is exiting and pull. That will lay that right next to the first 2 beads. Sew back up through it, pull tight. Sew down through the previous bead and back up through the bead you just added. Pull tight. Now you have 3. Pick up another 6/0 seed bead. We're just going to be working with one color first. Go into the previous seed bead and then back down into the seed bead you just added. And pull. And then go back up through the first seed bead and back down through the seed bead you just added. We want this base to be nice and secure and neat. Pick up another and do the same thing. Our thread is coming out here. We're going to go into the opposite side of the previous bead and pull the one we just added tight. Go up through the one we just added and then back down through the previous bead. And this is what you should have. Back up through the bead you just added, pull your thread tight, and we will add one more. Pick up a bead, go into the opposite side where your thread is exiting on the previous bead, pull tight, go back through the new bead you just added, go back up through the previous bead, and then back down through the bead you just added and pull tight. So we have 6 6/0 seed beads. Now we're going to do tubular herringbone, so we are going to take our little 6/0 seed beads here and place them in a circle. Now we are coming out of the bottom of this bead here, so we're going to go into the bottom of the very first bead in our sequence and pull them together. We're coming out at the top of the first bead in the sequence. We're going to go through the top of the last bead in the sequence and pull. We're going to just sew through the 2 of them in this circular motion 2 to 3 times to secure them very well. And then I'm going to go back through the last bead and up through the next bead right next to it. And this is where we will start our herringbone stitch. We'll pick up 2 6/0 seed beads, and we're coming out of this bead here. We're going to go directly down into the next bead and pull. And they will lay out flat on top of the 2 beads. We are exiting down here under this seed bead here we're going to go up through the very next seed bead and pull. Pick up 2 seed beads onto your needle and go into the very next seed bead through the top. Come up through the bottom of the next seed bead in the sequence. Pick up 2 more onto your needle and go back down or go into the next seed bead, right next to the one your thread is coming out of. And now we have 2 rows. So we're coming out of the bead here. We're going to come up through both beads in the little row next to where we're coming out. This is how we step up to begin our next row. We will always go through 1 bead as we're making our row until we get to the very last and need to step up. Then we will go through 2 beads. So now we will pick up 2 more 6/0s onto our thread. We are coming out of this stack here. We're going to go down just into the top bead next to where our thread is coming out and pull. And this is what you should have. Now we're coming out here. We're going to go up into this bead right here, right next to it, just the top bead in the next stack. Pick up 2 6/0 seed beads, go down through the bead next to where your thread is coming out, just the top bead, and pull. Go up underneath the next bead in your sequence, or in your next stack, the top bead. Pick up 2 6/0 seed beads. Go into the top bead next to where your thread is exiting and pull. Sometimes you have to lay them out a little bit. Now you have this little funky looking separated stacks. As we sew around, they will start to pull together. We need to step up now. We've done all 3 of our stacks. So if you look, you will see that the thread is coming out right here. We want to go directly across, always directly across. Our thread bridges will always be directly across. So that means we have to pick up 2 seed beads. And if you always look where your thread is coming out, you'll never forget to go up 2 when you're stepping up. Because if you do forget, it will totally throw off your weave. You'll have diagonal threads on your thread bridge. And in this particular project, that won't work because we are going to embellish the thread bridge. Okay, so now we're coming out of, we've stepped up, we're coming out of the bead here. We are going to go down into the very next bead on top and pull. Lay our beads out. And then go into the next stack, the top bead in the next stack. Pull your thread through. Pick up 2 6/0 seed beads. Go into the bead directly next to the bead you're coming out of and pull. Then go into the next stack, just the top bead in the next stack. Pick up 2 6/0 seed beads. Go down into the bead right next to it. We've done all 3 of our columns. So now we need to step up. So we are going to, our thread is coming out here. We want to go directly across and go up 2 seed beads. And now we're starting to form a little cone or a little tube. And we will do the same as we've been doing. We're coming out of the bead right here. We're going to go into the next bead and pull. And then we'll go into our next stack and add 2 more. Go down, and then we will go over to our next stack. Go up through the top bead, pick up 2 6/0 seed beads, come down through the top bead next to the bead you're coming out of, and then we need to step up because we've done all 3 of our columns. So we will go directly across and go up 2 beads. And now that we have the stitch, we're going to do a little shortcut here. We're going to go up through or down through the next bead or next to where our thread is coming out, and then we're going to grab the next bead in line too, so that we're ready to add beads to our next stack. We're already underneath our top bead and coming through it. Then we're going to do the same thing on the next stack and pull. On your last stack, I don't recommend that you do that because you'll have a tendency to just pick up 1 bead and you'll forget to step up. So just go through like you normally would and then go up 2 beads. And you're just going to continue doing this stitch until you have 12 rows. So just count one of the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to do 6 more rows. Make sure that when you count that you're on your last unit, or you will have a lopsided unit. You want to make sure all of your stacks have the same amount of beads in them. And after you have 12, I'll show you how to switch to another color. So I've done my 12 rows. You want to make sure there are 12 beads in each row, all the way around. And then we're going to switch colors and we're going to do 12 rows of our second color. It's exactly the same thing we were doing. The only thing that's a little bit different is when you step up, you're stepping up into 2 colors, and sometimes you'll forget and just come up through the color you just added. So you always want to make sure that you want to step up through both. So we're going to just go ahead and start adding our next row here. And then go up to the next bead. These seed beads are a little different shape than my white ones. It's okay. So here, I'm going to step up. See where my thread is coming out? Directly, the bead directly across from where it's coming out, I will go up 2 beads. And then I will continue sewing with this color, and I will do it for 12 rows, just as we did with the white, and then we will come back and discuss our sequence of rows here. Okay, so instead of coming back after each section, all we do is change colors and continue the same stitch. So I have done my pattern all the way to my mid-center where it does change a little bit. So you will do 12 of one color, 12 of the second color, 12 of the first color again, 6 of the second color, 6 of the first color, 3 of the second color, and 3 of the first color. When you get to this point, this will be our center, and this is where things are going to change. We are going to do the same stitch, but now we are going to use crystal. We're going to get our 4mm round crystals, and we are going to make our center part. So instead of picking up 2 6/0 seed beads, you will pick up 2 of your crystals. You're coming out here. That's where my thread is coming out from my last round. And we'll just do the same exact thing we've been doing. Go down through the second bead and up through the next column. Now, these are a little bit bigger and they're faceted, so they kind of need a little bit of help getting into the right spot. So just kind of arrange things as you do this. Now those are laying nicely. I'm going to pick up 2 more. I'm going to go down through the next bead and up through the next column and pull. Oops, out of frame, sorry about that. Just arrange them as neatly as you can, and then pick up 2 more. And now we're coming out of here. We're going to go through the next one and pull. Arrange our crystals. There, now they're laying nicely. And now I have to do my step up, so I'm going to go up through the white 6/0 seed bead and the crystal. And then I'm going to do 1 more row of crystal. So I'm going to pick up 2 crystals onto my thread, go down into the next crystal. Doing these one at a time, column at a time, is probably a good idea when you get to the second row so that you can arrange it nicely. Come up through your next crystal. Pick up 2 more crystals. Go down through your next crystal. They're a little bit more difficult. You get a lot of thread slack. So just kind of arrange it the best you can. And then go into the next crystal. Pull everything tight. Pick up 2 more crystals. It's hard for me to see these holes in the clear crystals. Then go down through the next crystal. And then we will go up through both crystals on the next column here to step up. Now we have 2 rows of crystals. We are going to now do 1 row of our main color. I'm using white as my main. So I'm coming out here. I'm going to go down into the next crystal. Then come up through the next crystal. Pick up 2 white seed beads or whatever color you're using. This part takes a little bit of time because it's not quite as easy to get nice and neat. The other part will just roll right through. You'll move pretty quick because the size of the 6/0 seed beads, that weave moves pretty quickly. Then we will come up through the next set. Go down through the crystal. Here is our step up. We've got to get between these crystals here. Come up through the crystal and the 6/0 seed beads. And now we're going to do 2 rows of crystal again. Pick up your crystals, come down through, go up through the next bead, pick up 2 more crystals, pick up 2 more crystals, and then we will come up through the seed bead and the crystal. Pull everything tight. And 1 more row of crystal. Then come back up through. It's a little bit more difficult to come up through the crystals. And pull everything tight. And now we will do 3 rows of white on top of our crystals, and then we'll just follow our pattern that we have on the other side. So you will do 3 rows of white, 3 rows of blue, or whatever color you're using, and just do exactly the same as you're working your way on the other side of the necklace as you did on this side, and we'll be back. Okay, so now I've gone to length. I've done this side just as I did the first side, and now I'm to length and I need to finish up my end. My end is a little loose and wobbly, as you can see. We need to secure this end like this end. So we are going to, let's get pretty close here. We're coming out of this bead here. Now, we're going to have to secure them together, so we're going to do basically a ladder stitch on top of here. So we're coming out of this bead here, we're going to go down into the bead right next to it and grab a hold of the 2 together. Go back into the one that you're coming out of. So basically just down the next one and then back up into the one you're coming out of. and do it a couple of times just to get it nice and secure. Now we're coming out of this one, we're going to go up into the one next to it. Go back down into the previous bead. And then back up the bead we started in. And then we're going to go over to the next one. Back up into the one we started in. Back down into the one next to it. Back up. Now you can do this as many times as you want, just get it nice and secure. And now I'm going to move into the one next to the bead that we're in. Just sew a circle. And then the one next to that bead. And then into the very last one. Now they're all pretty darn secure there. And I can start working an end to gather this together and put my wire protector on. So I'm going to pick up 5 11/0 seed beads onto my needle. Like this. And then I am coming out of the top of this bead here. I'm going to go into the bead next to it and pull. I'm going to go up to the bead next to the bead we just went through, go up through it. Then I'm going to pick up 5 more seed beads. Go down through the bead next to the bead you're coming out of. Then go up through the bead next to that bead. Pick up 5 more seed beads. And down into the bead next to the bead we're coming out of. And now we have a little loopies on top here. We're going to go up. We're coming out of this bead here. We're going to go up the bead next to it and up the seed beads until we get to the 3rd seed bead we added. Now I'm coming out of the top of this little seed bead here. Just traveled up. Now I'm going to go into the seed bead in the next group of seed beads on the very top, the 3rd one right in the center. And then over to the one in the next grouping, the 3rd one right on top. And then back into the first one I started coming through. and pull them tight. Just like this. Now, sew back through all 3 of them. Just to gather them tight and make sure. Let's get even a little closer. These are tiny and hard to see. And now I'm coming out of this little seed bead on top here. See if we can get close without blurring. And I need to add my wire protector. So I'm going to sew down the 2 little seed beads right next to the top one I'm coming out of. Right there. Pull my thread through. Then I'm going to go up through the little grouping right next to it, 2 little seed beads here. I'm going to pick up a seed bead and a 4mm round crystal and a seed bead. Now I'm coming out of this little grouping right on top here, right here. I am going to go down into not the next grouping right next to it, but the grouping next to that one. And just go through the 2 seed beads. Don't go through the 3rd on the top that we sewed through. Just the 2 on the bottom, right here. And pull. Then we are going to go up the 2 next in the grouping next to the grouping we just exited. Just up the 2, not the 3rd one that we secured in the middle. And we're going to pick up a seed bead and we're going to come through the crystal we're going to pick up a seed bead and we're going to go down, skip a grouping, go down into the next grouping. Just the 2 bottom seed beads and pull. And this is what you should have. Now we're going to travel back up the next grouping of 2. Pull tight. Go up through the little seed bead we added when we were putting our crystal on. Come through the crystal. Pick up a seed bead, a wire protector, and pull them down. It's like this. Go through the other tube of the wire protector. Put your finger and thumb over it and squeeze so you can guide your thread right into the groove on the wire protector. Pick up another 11/0 seed bead and come back through the crystal. And pull. And it'll just sit right on top of those little seed beads. Then come back through the seed bead and the wire protector and pull. This gets a little tight, especially if you're using a size 10 needle. And then back down the other side. back through your seed bead, down through the crystal, and then down through the grouping of beads underneath the crystal, and pull tight. Now, take a pair of flat nose or needle nose pliers and just close your wire protector so it looks just like that. And then we will begin sewing back down our work because we need to move over to the middle to do our embellishments. So this is our end here. And we're just going to start sewing back down our beads because you could tie off and move your thread and tie it back on down towards the middle, but I would prefer not to do that because it makes it have more strength. As you sew down your beads to get to the middle, just remember that your thread bridges cross, like from one bead to the other, straight across. So you can either go straight down the beads, which I don't really recommend because it might pull them funny. You can go down a few, like this. Get you closer. And then you can cross over, straight across like the thread bridge goes. Go down a few more, come out, and just work your way down your work this way. Okay, so now I am here at the first set of 6 white beads towards the center of my necklace. Now I am coming out right here between the two colors here, between the blue and the white. I'm going to travel all the way down all the white. These are the ones I'm going to embellish, but if you start at the top, you'll end at the top, and then you'll have to sew back down through the section of 6 beads after it's been embellished, and it's a little bit more difficult to do then. So we're going to sew down through all 6, just like this, and then we're going to grab this little thread bridge in the beads, between the beads that have the blue beads here. Grab the thread bridge. Pull your thread through. When you get real close, make a loop and tie a tiny half-hitch knot centering the thread on that thread bridge. Just like that. Now make sure you don't pull your thread real tight after you've sewn all the way through your beads so that you don't bunch your work. And then, once you get your knot, you can secure it. We're going to turn the work this way because we're going to travel up these beads to start an embellishment here. So we're going to pick up an 11-0, a roundel, and an 11-0. We are on this little thread bridge right here. We're going to skip a thread bridge and then pick up the next thread bridge. Go underneath it and pull our beads. And that'll just deposit them right on top. Let's get you a little closer so you can see my crystal is pretty fair. It's kind of hard to see. Just like that. Now, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pick up an 11-0, a roundel, and an 11-0. And then we're underneath this thread bridge. We're going to skip one. We're going to go underneath the next thread bridge right here. And pull. Then we're going to do the same thing again. We're underneath this one. We're going to skip this one and come underneath the one right next to the blue beads. If I can grab it. And then just gently pull. And that's what you have. Now that we're at the top, we are going to sew through the next blue bead on top here into the side here. Pull our thread underneath it. Then, let me move my work so you can see. So we came out from under this thread bridge. We sewed up through this blue bead here. We're going to sew down through the next one here. Pull our thread tight. Then we are going to grab this thread bridge here. Pull to a loop. Make a half hitch knot. Secure it, and then start another row of embellishments. So we're on this thread bridge here. We're going to skip this thread bridge and then pick up the next one and pull our crystal through, just like that. Then I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a crystal roundel, an 11-0 seed bead, skip this thread bridge, pick up the next one, and pull. And one more time. We're coming out from under this one, we're going to skip this one, come up through this one. Don't want to do that to my thread. There we go. Now we'll do one more, get you positioned, and then you'll go all the way around this entire section. So we're going to come up through this blue bead here, making sure our thread goes underneath the beads. Then we're going to go into the next bead, pull the thread between the beads, grab a hold of your thread bridge between the two beads, make a loop, tie a knot, and then start working your way down. And then do the same thing in these beads, come back up this row and go all the way around the entire unit of 6, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I have finished my embellishment all the way around this section of seed beads. Now I'm going to work my way down through the blue beads and into the second section of white beads, the 3 here. So I'm just going to bring my thread down, and then I'm going to come down. I think I'll move over one here. Yeah, I'll just come down. All 3 of the beads in the white section. Yeah, after you've worked your way down through the 3 little beads here, we're going to grab this thread bridge here, and right between the crystal and the white beads, make a little loop, tie a little knot. Now there's more space between the crystal and the white beads, so be careful with your knot, don't make it big and ugly. Okay, so this embellishment is just a little bit different. Instead of skipping this thread bridge here, we're going to pick up this thread bridge the very first one. So we're going to pick up a crystal roundel and 2 11/0s. And it's a really bad angle. Let me change this. My thread is on this thread bridge here. I am going to pick up the middle thread bridge. Just a little bit different on this one because we only have a short span of beads. So we're going to utilize this thread bridge up on the top, and we're going to scoop this one on the next one. So we're coming out underneath this one. We're going to pick up an embellishment. We're going to skip this thread bridge, and we're going to grab the one between the blue beads here. And pull. Going to go up through the blue bead, down through the next blue bead, pull your thread tight between the beads, grab a hold of the thread bridge between the white beads here, tie a knot. Pick up your embellishment, skip the first one, go into the second, thread bridge. I'm sewing at a very strange angle, I'm sorry. Okay, now we're going to pick up another embellishment. And we're coming off at this, under this thread bridge. We are going to grab the thread bridge right between the crystals. Let's see if I can get a better angle, I just can't. Okay, so let's see, can you guys see? Yeah. So I'm coming out from under this thread bridge. I'm going to pick up this thread bridge between the crystals here. And pull. Now I'm going to sew up through the crystal here, and then down through the crystal next to it, it's like this. Grab the thread bridge between the two white beads here. Tie a knot and continue your embellishment this way, all the way around the unit, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I have finished my embellishment around my my section of 3 white rows here. Now I have come out of my last row, tied onto the thread bridge, made sure everything was tight, secured my thread there. And now my thread is right here. I'm going to go down through the 2 crystals. Let me get a better angle here. I'm going to go down through the 2 crystals and the white seed bead in the center. Now we are going to embellish this row of white seed beads right down the center in the middle of the crystal here. So we're going to pick up a 11/0 seed bead, a crystal roundel, and 11/0 seed bead, as we've been doing all along. We're coming out here. We're going to go up into the next 6/0 seed bead. Pull it tight down next to the beads. Pick up another embellishment, just like this, and then you're coming out of this bead, go back into the one you just exited, or into the one right next to it. So you've just sewn a circle around the white bead. the 2 white beads in the center here. Now we're coming out here. We're going to pick up another embellishment, and we're going to go up the next bead right next to where our thread is coming out and pull our embellishment tight. Then we're going to pick up another embellishment, and we're going to come down. We're coming out here. We're going to come down into the bead next to it. Let's see if I can turn this and stay in frame. Pull tight. Now make sure your thread is underneath the first embellishment we added in these 2 6/0 seed beads, and come back underneath the first one. So we're exiting this one, we're going to go back into this one on the same side and pull. So make sure your thread stays underneath the embellishments. And then turn your work. Let's back off just a little. I can't stay in frame. Pick up an 11/0 seed bead, a crystal, and an 11/0 seed bead, and work into the next 6/0. There we go. And then the same thing, we're going to pick up another embellishment and work back into the bead that we first came out of. Little circle around these 2 6/0 seed beads. And then again, we're going to go underneath our embellishment, back through the seed bead that we just came out of before we added our last embellishment. Just round in a circle. Turn our work, and then we're going to embellish these 2. So we will do the exact same thing. Up through, pull them tight against the work, and again back into the one next to it that we've already embellished one side of, and pull. Bring your thread behind your embellishment, go back into the bead next to it here, and just continue all the way around until you've embellished them all. And we will be back. Okay, so I finished my middle embellishment. My thread is coming out of the white bead right here. I'm going to sew down into the next crystal underneath it, right here. Make sure your thread goes underneath the beads and not over the top of the little 11/0 here. Sew down into the next crystal. Sew down into the 3 white beads. Sew up into the next section of color here. And then over to the bead next to it. Grab a hold of the thread bridge. Tie a knot. Center yourself. And then begin your embellishments on your white beads here. Now I have finished my embellishments on this section of 3 white beads. My thread is here. I'm just going to sew down through the blue section of 3 here, and all the way down the section of white. Come up through my blue bead, right here, cross over to the bead next to it, and pull my thread down between the beads, grab a hold of the thread bridge, pull tight, make a little knot, center myself, and then I'm going to begin my embellishments again on the thread bridges. On this one, remember that you will skip every other thread bridge. So I have finished my section of 6 on this portion here that we've been working on, and I am now coming out of underneath this little thread bridge right here. So I'm just going to sew up through this little bead right above it here, this section right above it, into this one here, and then I'm going to grab the thread bridge, oops, the one here, right here, and tie off. And then I'm going to sew through a few beads and then just tie off on some thread bridges and just sew through a few more and tie off, cut off my thread, and then you can attach your needle to your tail and put your wire protector, just like we did the other side, on this side of your necklace, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have connected my other clasp, or my other wire protector, to the end that we hadn't finished yet with my tail thread, and now I have cut 2 little portions of chain here, and this is what's going to bring me to my length. So just cut or measure out the size that you want for your necklace. I've attached my lobster claw clasp to one of them just with a link. Now you can use jump rings if you'd like. You can also put a jump ring at the very end of the other piece of chain to connect to. However, these are very wide links, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm just going to take, I have opened one of my links, and I'm just going to slide it onto my wire protector and then close my link. On both sides. Evidently I didn't leave this one open, so I will open it and attach it. And now our project is finished. And we'll bring you close so you can see the embellishment up front. It's really kind of pretty, a little different. And you want to keep it rather a little bit short length, so it's just collarbone length, because what happens with this, once you embellish it, it gets a little stiff. So you want it to sit in a circle like this. You don't want it to have to hang like that. It will work, but it's just a little better like this. So anyway, that's how you make a tubular herringbone and embellish it. And I hope you enjoyed the project, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.